it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for another PB&J card class. And today I will be sharing a card featuring our new slapstick cling stamp called Young Love. And I just had so much fun creating a card with this beautiful image. I am going to show you here just real quick a supply list. This is all the supplies I've used in creating this card. And I will also be sharing in this video some Copic coloring, and here are all of the Copic colors I've used and separated out by where I use them to color. And I will be putting, I just put them up real quick right now, but I will be putting these back up on screen at the very end of the video, so you can hit pause at that time if you'd like to look at them in further detail. So I did start by stamping this just adorable image onto Neenah Solar White cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I stamped this in my stamp positioning tool, and I did stamp it a few times so I got a really dark image. And I find that I really like this crisp dark image when I color, so that I don't lose any of that detail once I have all the colors added to the image. Now I am going to just speed through this coloring, but I didn't want to leave it out because I just wanted to show you that the coloring can be quite simple. When I'm coloring, I really like to color just to relax, and so I don't want to think too much about light sources and all of that. I think it's just amazing that people that can really capture those light sources and do strong shadows. Someday maybe I'll be able to do that, but when I'm coloring, I like to just keep it pretty simple. I add my darker colors sort of where I see folds or areas in the illustration that already show some folds or lines, or any areas where things are overlapping or kind of curving back behind, like for instance on his sweater there under his arm. I made that area darker and it lighter as it moved out. Typically, but not always, I will start with my darker color first, and then I will blend that using a medium tone. And then I will blend it out with the lightest, and if needed I'll go back with the sort of work my way up and down from dark to lightest and lightest back down to dark. I like to have, mostly what I'm looking for is just variation in color, areas of light and areas of dark. And these images, these stamps for Penny Black, they're illustrated. This one is illustrated by Mo Manning, and I find with any of those stamps, it doesn't matter what you do when you're coloring it, it always turns out looking finished and very polished and professional, no matter how detailed or how basic the coloring is. The illustrations are just so well done that they actually are great for beginners, all the way up to very advanced, depending what techniques you want to try. But no matter what you do, I find I'm always very happy with the results when I'm coloring in these images that are illustrated by Mo Manning for Penny Black. Now I am working now here on her sweater, and you can see just like I did on his, I started with my darkest color, moved to my medium tone, and then I'm blending it out with my lightest. I did stamp several of these new just fun love theme stamps from Penny Black in advance, and I had them ready whenever I had a moment to sit down and color. And I find that coloring these adorable images, whether they're just really sweethearted like this one, or the cute, the characters, the kids, or even the critters, it is just such fun to be looking at and coloring something that is such a happy image. When I first started card making, I tended to focus more on elegance and floral designs, and I didn't do a lot with the critters or the cute images. And once I did, though, I was just hooked. There's something so fun about working with these images and coloring them. You just feel happy when you're working on them. So I recommend, if you haven't tried this style of stamp, to give it a try. You might find it something you never knew that you liked. At least that's how it worked out for me. Just a note here on her dress, I did use just the lightest color on the skirt, and then to blend that into the white areas, I did go in with a colorless blender to just blend that transition from the light marker to the white. I am adding a touch of yellow to this image in just a few spots. I find that really warms up whatever I'm coloring. I love the color yellow. It also gives me some options when I go to create my background of places I can add touches of yellow, like in the center of the flowers, or I didn't in this image, but it would also be nice if you were doing like a bright yellow sky, a sunny sky, or a sunset. Whatever colors I put into my focal point image, I like to try and tie those into the background. So I think of that a bit as I'm coloring my images, where I can use those again in the background design. So like I said before, I did stamp several of these images, and then I did all of the coloring at once, and then I also fussy cut all the images, and that's something I did all at once too. And what's great about that is you can just take it wherever you want to work. I did these in front of the TV, a whole bunch of different images, including this one in front of the TV while I was listening to a movie. And again, it's just a relaxing thing to do. I brought like a little bowl from the kitchen, and I could put all my scrap pieces and the finished pieces in there so nothing got lost. And then when I was done, I took it down to my craft room. I did cut right up against the line, and for these particular images, I do prefer that because I'm going to layer them onto a really brightly inked background, and so I like the way that that looks when it's layered against that bright inked background. So the last thing here is just to work on this bench, and I'm just adding some color here on these details. And I think, yep, I need to get his shoes. It's funny the things you forget to color as you're working on an image, and you go back and go, oh, I forgot his shoes, and go back and get that. So then I did take that and fussy cut it out, and here's what that looks like once it has been completely cut out. And now I'm going to take a Memento marker, and this is in the color of Tuxedo Black. And just using the side of that brush tip, I'm going to go around the image and just very lightly go around that. And what this does is it hides any imperfections in your cutting. It gives us a nice finished look, and it really is amazing how much you can hide when you go around with this marker. And that's something to keep in mind as you're cutting. If you don't quite get it right up to the edge, or part of it is still white, don't worry. You can usually fix that just by going over with the marker. I also like to take just a very light touch of Distress ink, and I'm going to use Vintage Photo on an ink blending tool with a foam pad, and very lightly go around the edges, especially in any little sort of fiddly areas. That will also hide any areas of your imperfections in your cutting. So now I'm ready to create the background, and I'm going to use 3 different dies to do this. The Tweet Things, I'll use the little flowers from that, the Metropolitan City die, and also the Love Buds die. And I like to lay everything out, sort of rearrange things till I'm happy with the look, and then I'm ready to start adding color to my die cut pieces. All of my die cut pieces were cut from Neenah Solar White cardstock, except for this Metropolitan die, which I did cut from Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. And the reasoning behind that is I am just doing this background as a tone-on-tone background. I'm not adding a different color to the skyline as I am to the actual sky. So by cutting it from watercolor paper, it's just a little bit thicker, and it just gives a little bit more dimension to that background and to that tone-on-tone look. I'm very lightly inking this with Memento Danube Blue ink, and I'm using here a jumbo sponge applicator tool and sort of pouncing lightly onto those buildings. I cut it twice, so I have just enough room to go across the card. Now for the green areas at the bottom of the card, I just hand trim those, and I'm just lining that up there at the bottom of the card, sliding it down a little and drawing a line with a pencil so I know about where that sky needs to start. I'm also inking this with that Danube Blue ink, starting off of the edge or below that line where I know the greenery will be, and working my way on in a circular motion. I want it to be darker near the bottom of the card, so I am pressing harder with the sponge applicator tool at the bottom and applying more layers there. But as I work my way up towards the top of the card, my pressure on the applicator tool is very, very light. You can see also that I'm adding multiple layers of ink, and what that does, it helps you avoid any really bold sponge marks. I do a light pressure but more layers to get a nice smooth blended background. And I'm just checking here to see if I am happy with the tone on tone look with the buildings, and also if it matches up with my colored piece. And it looks good to go. So now I'm ready to start inking the green areas for the bottom. Now I'm going to use Bamboo Leaves Memento ink. I like the look of inked white cardstock that's been inked. I feel like it gives areas of light and dark and just a little bit more visual interest to my backgrounds, but you certainly could cut this from green cardstock and layer that onto the bottom as well. This is a little hand-trimmed hill, and I want this to be just a touch darker. And by doing 2 layers of the green, it gives me a place to nestle in that bench and also some of the flowers and greenery that I die cut. So that's another just little tip if you're going to be layering an image onto a background. If you have 2 layers of greenery, it will just make it look a little bit more grounded. I want this to be a touch darker, so I am also going to add a very light layer of Memento Olive Grove ink on top. But by first inking it with the bamboo leaves, it does sort of keep that same tone as the other one that I already inked. Now I'm ready to work on this other die cut piece. This is called Love Buds. And I am doing that with bamboo leaves to begin with. And I'm just pouncing sort of closer to the stem there to darken it up a bit. And I will add some of that olive grove with a very light touch, a pouncing touch on the die. And then I will make sure that it looks good with the other greenery and move on to the flowers. These I'm going to color with my Copic markers using the same yellows as I used on the focal point image so that everything matches and ties together. Just some very basic shading with 2 colors. I find I use these little flowers all the time. This is the handiest little die set called Tweet Things. They're great for adding in to backgrounds or sort of nestling in if you need just a little more detail on your card. So now I'm ready to start assembling everything. I'm just putting some tape here onto the back of this green piece, and that's going to be flat onto the panel. Next, I will glue down this Metropolitan die. And I'll get the other 2 little buildings glued on there too. And this basic scene that I'm doing here would work really well for any type of image that you wanted to put in the front. It's really versatile. You could put critters in front, you could put pretty much anything because it is very tone on tone with just the blue sky and the greenery down at the bottom. Now this hill I am popping up with foam squares. And I've put foam squares on the top of the couple on the bench, but for their feet and the other areas I am going to use just liquid adhesive, so those are sticking right there. And here's where I can start nestling in behind that sort of hill that's in the very front. So I will use this Love Buds die to do that, and I've got just some little foam squares to add on here so that that's popped up, but the bottom can be nestled into that hill. And I will add some foam squares on the back of these little flowers as well. And then I did not put a sentiment on the on this card. I just felt like it was complete with that one on the front. But once it's added to a card panel, I think it would be great for an anniversary or a Valentine card or a thinking of you for your special someone. Even a springtime card. It would be just a fun springtime card as well. Once those flowers were added and kind of nestled one in the hillside there on the bottom left, I'm just putting some self-adhesive pearls to the centers of those. And the card was finished. Oh, I did trim off a little extra down there. So here's a look at that finished card. I had so much fun creating this scene and coloring that adorable couple, that new stamp from Penny Black called Young Love. I thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, as well as on our website and blog. And I will link to all of those down in the YouTube description box below. And if you stay tuned, you will find the complete list of supplies as I promised at the very beginning of the video.